I am continuing the series that Adam has been doing about Christ. If it's okay with you guys, we like to talk about Jesus in this church. So I wanted to continue on with the series, and I'm going to talk about Christ, our healer, which I know us as a church, as a community, we embrace, that we know that God heals. We've seen God heal. Even as we were praying for Sella, we've already seen healing in Sella's little body as God was knitting her in Deborah's womb. But I just want to just dive deeper into that, and we're going to be mostly in the healings of John. So if you do have your Bibles on your phone, you want to follow along, we are going to be in the book of John. And we're going to talk about the 4 healings that John talks about, what I think is very strategic. Some of the other Gospels talk about a lot more. They document a lot more of Jesus' healings, but John chooses only these 4, which is very fascinating. And we're going to start in John 4 with the healing of the official son, which is also interesting. This is actually following right after Jesus' encounter with the woman in the well, which Adam talked about last week. So this is right after this encounter, and this is the first healing documented in the Gospel of John. And what's fascinating about this healing is that this healing was done long distance, which was never heard of before in the Bible, in the context. The Jewish people didn't have a context for this type of healing. And Jesus is showing dominion over that. But this is the 4 we're going to stick to. John 4, the official son. John 5, the paralytic by the pool. John 9, the healing of the blind man. And then John 11, the raising of Lazarus. So we're going to first go to John 4, 46 to 54, and talk about the official. So we're going to start there, in 46 there. So Jesus came again into Cana of Galilee, where he made the water wine. And so he's coming back to a place where he did his first miracle. And there was a certain nobleman whose son was sick at Capernaum. When he heard that Jesus was come out of Judea into Galilee, he went to him and besought him that he would come down and heal his son, for he was at the point of death. And then Jesus said to him, "Except you see signs and wonders, you will not believe." Right now, he's referring to the Old Testament, where God is saying, I have it here in Numbers 14:11, referencing the Old Testament there of saying, like, you guys need to see signs and wonders in order to believe. That's what he's referencing right there. Verse 49, the nobleman says to him, "Sir, come down before my child die." Jesus says to him, "Go your way, your son lives." And the man believed the word that Jesus had spoken to him, and he went his way. And as he was now going down, his servants met him and told him, saying, "Your son lives." Then inquired he of them the hour when he began to amend. And they said to him, "Yesterday at the 7th hour, the fever left him." So the father knew that it was at the same hour in which Jesus said to him, "Your son lives," and himself believed, and his whole house. So this one act, what I love, there's a theme if you look throughout the Gospels, and one of my favorite ones I've talked about before is Lydia and also the jailer, mostly the jailer with Paul, of where one person says yes to Jesus and the whole family follows, where it's a family thing, right? Following Jesus should be a family thing. And I love that that's a consistent theme throughout the New Testament with healings, with encounters, that it's them and the household. Where was I? And this, again, the second miracle that Jesus did when he was come out of Judea into Galilee. And then we'll go into chapter 5. So let's sit in this story for a minute. So one, this is showing the power over distance. Jesus was able to speak the word. The man believed. It happened. The guy didn't even know. Jesus said it. I'm going to believe it. And he went back home. Of course, there's no way he couldn't call up the cell phone, check out what was going on. He walked in faith. Can you imagine walking? And this was a long walk. This wasn't like he was just left the road. This was probably almost overnight, a day's walk this guy had to do to get back home. So imagine that walking home, holding on to that word, and still not knowing, did the word come forth? But he did that walk in faith. And I think that's something that we need to take, that when Jesus says something, to hold on to it, to believe it, and walk in that word in faith that it's going to happen. Because that's exactly what this man had to do. He also came to Jesus in faith, right? He came to Jesus expecting. It's one interesting thing as we look through the miracles, there's two different types of miracles we'll see, where one comes in faith or Jesus initiates it. So that's something, again, for us to take note of, because there's sometimes some people say like, oh, they probably weren't healed because they didn't have faith. That's not true. And that's not right to put that on someone, to say, oh, you weren't healed because you don't believe, because that's not biblical. I remember, even as you pray for the sick, there is always a thing that, I know Randy Clark says it, no matter what, that person needs to feel loved. You don't ever condemn somebody because the healing doesn't happen right there, right? That person needs to feel loved no matter what. So faith can be a factor, but it's not the factor. Like, you don't have to have faith in order for Jesus to heal you. And again, we'll see that in a couple other healings here. This is also what's interesting. It's similar to the centurion servant that is also talked about in Matthew 8 and Luke 7, of where the centurion believed, just say the word, Jesus. You don't have to come to my house. I'm not worthy of you coming to my house. Just say the word, and I know my servant's going to be healed. Just say the word. So I'm curious to wonder if the centurion knew about this story to have that belief. It's like, oh, I've heard he did it for this guy. All I need to do is have just him speak a word. But also, what faith? Just to believe, all I need is that word from Jesus, and I can run with that word. So let's move on to John 5, where we talk about the paralytic man. So this is, again, right after this healing. After this, there was a feast of the Jews, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. And now there is at Jerusalem, by the sheep market, a pool, which is called, in the Hebrew tongue, Bethesda, having 5 porches. In these lay a great multitude of impotent folk, of blind, halt, withered, waiting for the moving of the water. I want to stop right here because I want to go back to where it talks about the sheep market, because there's something really profound about that. Also, as some other translations say, the sheep gate, as I have up there. So this is where the sheep for sacrifice would have been taken, to enter through that gate, to be washed in the pool, to be ready for sacrifice. It is not an accident that Jesus was right there, being the sheep that would be slain for our sins. How strategic. God is very strategic, and sometimes you have to see for those little things. And not only hit me, like, not only was he there, but he also healed someone in that place where sheep got prepared for sacrifice, just like Jesus would be. I think that was very profound, to just take a moment and think about that Jesus already was showing signs of what he would do for us. Even the very beginning of his ministry, there were signs of who he was. And so let's continue on. Verse 4. For an angel went down at a certain season into the pool and troubled the water. Whosoever then first, after the troubling of the water, stepped in was made whole of whatsoever disease he had. And a certain man was there, which had an infirmity for 38 years. Can you imagine waiting 38 years by that pool? And then verse 6, when Jesus saw him lie and knew that he had been now a long time in that case, he says to him, will you be made whole? Other translations, do you want to be made whole? The impotent man answered him, Sir, I have no man when the water is troubled to put me into the pool, but while I am coming, another steps down before me. How defeated this man feels. And yet he's still there, right? He's still sitting by that pool with some degree of faith, but also being like, I'm never going to get it. No, I'm never going to get my healing. I'm here. No one's here to help me. Someone's always faster than me to jump in. I'm not going to get it. But he also misses the question Jesus is asking. Do you want to be made whole? Because the guy, again, didn't have the revelation of who is this guy? Who is this guy? And this is also, what is it? This man did not come to Jesus, didn't know about Jesus and what's about to happen. Jesus is about to heal him. He had no concept. Jesus tried to just ask that question, do you want to be made whole? And he's like, well, I can't because of this, and this. Again, let's put ourselves in that situation. How many times Jesus is like, do you want to be made well? Do you want to be made whole? And excuses can start spewing out of our mouth. Well, this, well, that. No, you have the person in front of you that all those excuses doesn't matter. All those excuses doesn't matter. Just a simple question. Do you want to be made whole? Do you? That's the question even sometimes we need to ask yourself when we're in certain situations. Do you want to move forward? Do you want to get out of that mindset? And the simple yes can just saying yes to Jesus. But let's continue on. So he asked him, will you be whole? He gave his excuses, and Jesus said to him, rise, take up your bed, and walk. And immediately the man was made whole and took up his bed and walked. And on the same day was the Sabbath. One interesting thing John always includes, the what's about to happen next. The response from the religious, because we think like, oh, this guy was healed. This should be celebrated. But the Jews therefore said to him that was cured, it is a Sabbath day. It is not lawful for you to carry your bed. Did they not know this guy's been sitting here for 38 years? Finally healed, will be like, you shouldn't be carrying your bed. It's not time for that. What? Talk about missing it. He answered them, he that made me whole, the same said to me, take up your bed and walk. So at that moment, all the laws in the world didn't matter to this man, because what happened? He met Jesus, he received the word, he responded to the word, right? It took faith for him just to get up and walk. Let's recognize that for a minute. It took faith for him to get up and walk. Because you can easily be sitting there like, wait a minute, I don't know if maybe I got to check out my legs first, I got to check out. But he got up and still carried his bed. He responded to Jesus. Immediately was healed, and he responded to Jesus. And the next thing he comes into contact with are these people saying, wait a minute, you can't do that. We can't allow religion or the structures of this world to diminish what Jesus has done in our lives. We can't, because that's exactly what's happening. This religious structure has now told this man, you can't do that because of all these extra laws that we put into place. This is obviously not the first time we're going to encounter this. But let's continue. We're in verse 12. Then asked him, what man that which said to you, take up your bed and walk? And he that was healed knew not who it was. He didn't even know it was Jesus. He still had no idea. And yet he chose to believe and to get up and walk. For Jesus had conveyed himself away, a multitude being in that place. And Jesus didn't even stay for the recognition. Jesus didn't be like, look what I did, like bring him forward. Like he just did his thing and left. Afterward, Jesus finds him, but he still goes back. He still goes back. And said to him, behold, you are made whole. Sin no more, lest a worse thing come upon you. The man departed and told the Jews that it was Jesus which made him whole. And therefore did the Jews persecute Jesus and sought to slay him, because he had done these things on the Sabbath day. But Jesus answered them, my Father works until now, and I work. Therefore the Jews sought the more to kill him, because he not only had broken the Sabbath, but said also that God was his Father, making himself equal with God. So let's pause right there. All he did was heal on the Sabbath, and now all of a sudden they want to kill him. That seems like a very drastic move. And then it wasn't even, he didn't even say he was equal to God yet. And they already wanted to kill him. All because of a man got healed. All because of Jesus. Well, because there's more to it than that. Because Jesus healing this man, that was a sign. Because already in the Old Testament, and I'm sure somewhere in there, these men knew the Torah, they knew the law, and they knew something had to know that this man was in alignment with some of the words that have already been spoken. Like I said, referring in what I'm about to say later, there's 2 more spots in the Old Testament. There's many verses in the Old Testament. There's the healing in his wings. He took upon our infirmities. There's many. So that somewhere in there they had to know there's some signs here that's pointing to this guy. There's more to this guy. And yet they wanted to kill him. They wanted to go after him. Let's continue and see what he says. Verily, verily, I say to you, the Son can do nothing of himself, but what he sees the Father do. For what things soever he does, these also does the Son likewise. For the Father loves the Son, and shows him all things that himself does. And he will show him greater works than these, that you may marvel. For as the Father raises up the dead, and makes them alive, even so the Son makes alive whom he wills. For the Father judges no man, but has committed all judgment to the sons, that all men should honor the Son, even as they honor the Father. He that honors not the Son honors not the Father, which has sent him. Verily, verily, I say to you, he that hears my word and believes on him that sent me has everlasting life, and shall not come into condemnation, but is passed from death to life. Verily, verily, I say to you, the hour is coming, and now is when the dead shall hear the voice of Son of God, and they that hear shall live. For as the Father has life in himself, so has he given to the Son to have life in himself, and has given him authority to execute judgment also, because he is the Son of Man. Marvel not at this, for the hour is coming in which all that are in graves shall hear his voice, and shall come forth, that they have done good to the resurrection of life, they that have done evil to the resurrection of damnation. I can of my own self do nothing. As I hear, I judge, and my judgment is just, because I seek not my own will, but the will of the Father, which has sent me. So the Father, if he's saying that, that means the healing he just did came from God. Exactly telling these men, you're condemning what your Father, what God wants to do at this very moment. Say healing is very much on the Father's heart, because it's what Jesus does. I do want to move on. I want to move on to John 9, 1 to 17. Moving on to the blind man. And as Jesus passed by, he saw a man which was blind from birth. And his disciples asked him, saying, Master, who did sin, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? So again, there was belief within the Jewish culture that if there was sickness was there, it was because of sin. Jesus is going to answer, that's not the case. He answered, neither has the man sinned, nor his parents, but that the works of God should be made manifest in him. I must work the works of him that sent me while it is day. The night comes when no man can work. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world. When he had thus spoken, he spat on the ground and made clay of the spittle, and he anointed the eyes of the blind man with clay, and said to him, go wash in the pool of Siloam, which is by interpretation, sent. He went his way, therefore, and washed, and came seeing. The neighbors, therefore, and they which before had seen him, that he was blind, said, is not this he that sat and begged? Some said, this is he. Others said, he is like him. But he said, I am he. therefore said to him, how were your eyes opened? He answered and said, a man that is called Jesus made clay and anointed my eyes and said to me, go to the pool of Siloam and wash. And I went and washed and received sight. Then said to him, where is he? He said, I know not. They brought to the Pharisees him that before was blind. And it was the Sabbath day when Jesus made the clay and opened his eyes. Oh, there it is again. We're going to get some resistance. Then again, the Pharisees also asked him how he had received his sight. He said to them, he put clay on my eyes, and I washed, and I did see. Therefore said some of the Pharisees, this man is not of God, because he keeps not the Sabbath day. Others said, how can a man that is a sinner do such miracles? So they're all of a sudden they're seeing themselves. There's a contradiction going on here. There's some turmoil of where on one side, if they want to keep to their rigorous laws, then they have to say, oh, this man is not of God. But if he's not of God, then how did he heal? So they have to embrace a truth. They have to choose one here. So, but I find this passage so fascinating, and we're going to, just the back and forth between the Pharisees and the man. And to me, it reminded me of Psalm 9, oh no, where is it? Oh, I lost it. Oh yeah, it is Psalm 19:7. The law of the Lord is perfect, refreshing the soul. The statutes of the Lord are trustworthy, making wise the simple. Because this guy feels like he's about to school them in a way, and it's almost like the Pharisees should know. So they say to the blind man again, what say you of him that has opened your eyes? He said, he is a prophet. But the Jews did not believe concerning him that he had been blind and received his sight until they called the parents of him that had received his sight. And they asked them, saying, is this your son, who you say was born blind? How then does he now see? His parents answered them and said, we know that this is our son and that he was born blind, but by what means he now sees, we know not, or who has opened his eyes, we know not. He is of age, ask him. He shall speak for himself. They're saying this also because they're scared, because they're a little intimidated by this Pharisee panel, and they're like, talk to him. Like, where did you just talk to, he was there, we weren't there. Talk to the source, because again, they're trying to get answers that will to justify their beliefs, and they're not going to get it. These words spoke his parents because they feared the Jews, for the Jews had agreed already that if any man did confess that he was Christ, he should be put out of the synagogue. Therefore said his parents, he is of age, ask him. Then again called the man that was blind and said to him, give God the praise. We know that this man is a sinner. He answered and said, whether he be a sinner or no, I know not. One thing I know, that whereas I was blind, I now see. Then said they to him, what did he to you? How did he open your eyes? He answered them, I have told you already. You did not hear. They didn't want to hear. Wherefore, would you hear it again? Will you be also his disciples? Oh, what a comeback. He's almost like, oh, you want to know more? You want to follow him? Is that why you want to know more questions? What a comeback. I love this back and forth. Then they reviled him and said, you are his disciple, but we are Moses' disciples. We know that God spoke to Moses. As for this fellow, we know not from where he is. The man answered and said to them, why herein is a marvelous thing, that you know not from where he is, and yet he has opened my eyes. Now we know that God hears not sinners, but if any man be a worshiper of God and does his will, him he hears. Since the world began, was it not heard that any man opened the eyes of one that was born blind? If this man were not of God, he could do nothing. They answered and said to him, you were altogether born in sins, and do you teach us? And they cast him out. Oh, they were done with him. So again, they're trying, justify saying, oh, you were born blind because of sins. They're completely trying to shut off this man's voice because of what God has done. But again, what did he have? He had an undisputed miracle. He was blind. Now he can see. That was something that what they could not dispute, but they were trying to. They were trying to discredit him. Again, the wise, the making wise the simple is exactly what's going on here. And again, he's even speaking like that makes so much more sense, right? Well, he's a sinner. He couldn't have done this. He has to be someone that's of God. He has to be able to hear. Also what he said, remember, this is the first time ever documented that anyone has ever been cured of being blind from birth. The first time ever is right here. There's not, now people were made like healed of blindness, maybe temporary blindness, but not from birth. This is the only time. So what is Jesus trying to do here? Again, if you have to look at each healing is documented here has a purpose. The first one being, again, power over distance. The second one is that, he came to heal, to set us free. He's already showing that he's a sign that he is the Lamb. He is the sacrifice. And John, and in this one, that he's able to do nothing, that is something that no one's ever done before. That has to be from God. There's a purpose to this story being here. And again, trying to come against what the religious structure at the time is trying to do. And again, what's also, it should be encouraging us is if you have a testimony, to share it, because that's something that's undisputed. That's for you to share. There's something, now this guy has a testimony that pretty much points to that this is Jesus. He is the Son of God. He is the Christ. And no one can say anything against that. Because everyone knew this guy had been blind since birth. Everyone knew. Now he has this testimony that has to be shared. But again, what does Jesus do again? Just like the second story we read, he came back to the guy. Jesus heard that they had cast him out. And when he had found him, he said to him, "Do you believe in the Son of God?" I wanted us to catch that. He heard he was cast out of the synagogue. And yet Jesus came to him. So when something spits you out and rejects you, Jesus is still there. Jesus is still there. He came back to the guy. Even in his rejection, Jesus met him there. "Do you believe on the Son of God?" He answered and said, "Who is he, Lord, that I might believe on him?" And Jesus said to him, "You have both seen him, and it is he that talks with you." And he said, "Lord, I believe." And he worshiped him. And Jesus said, "For judgment I am come into this world, that they which see not might see, and they that which might see might be blind." And some of the Pharisees which were with him heard these words and said to him, "Are we blind also?" Yes. The answer to that question is yes. Jesus said to them, "If you were blind, you should have no sin. But now you say, 'We see,' therefore your sin remains." Very, very fascinating interaction here. But I'm going to read a little bit more into chapter 10, because this is still, it's a really continuous story, even though it's split up here. "Verily, verily," see, there's a lot of, when he says verily, verily, it's like, listen up. "I say to you, he that enters not by the door into the sheepfold, but climbs up some other way, the same is a thief and a robber. But he that enters in by the door is the shepherd of the sheep. To him the porter opens, and the sheep hear his voice, and he calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. And when he puts forth his own sheep, he goes before them, and the sheep follow him, for they know his voice. And a stranger will they not follow, but will flee from him, for they know not the voice of strangers." This parable spoke Jesus to them, but they understood not what things they were which he spoke to them. So this is to the Pharisees. They're not understanding. But what is Jesus saying here? That's what kind of the connection. First I thought, the sheep gate. And I looked into that in chapter 5. And then here Jesus saying, "I am the gate. I am the shepherd." There's so many things Jesus is saying who he is. Or I am the gate. No one enters except through me. Also, I'm the shepherd, I am the voice that the sheep respond to. And so very fascinating parts there that I encourage you to even read for yourself more. Of just because there's, again, we can't, when we read the Bible, we really have to see God's intentionality. Because it wasn't a mistake that he went to a pool that was by the sheep gate. That wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a mistake for him to heal that blind man, for him to be seen, and then for him to have this interaction afterwards. Jesus is so strategic to not miss those little things within Scripture. I know I'm not even doing all of it right now. I'm sure I'm missing some stuff too. But that's where we have, with the multitude of counsel, we start to get more of each part, right? So right now I'm just trying to give you some parts that where I see, but then obviously you listen to other people like, oh, they have these parts and that parts, but that's why it should be multitude. That's why I appreciate so much of this house. There's a lot of people here that I know God speaks to, and God speaks through, and that's the way it should be. It shouldn't just be the man of the hour with the power type of thing going on. But let's move on to John 11 with Lazarus. And talk about strategic. This is an extremely strategic healing. And pretty much his last healing before going to get crucified. Now a certain man was sick, named Lazarus, of Bethany, the town of Mary and her sister Martha. It was that Martha, which anointed the Lord with ointment and wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was sick. Therefore his sisters sent to him, saying, Lord, behold, he whom you love is sick. When Jesus heard that, he said, this sickness is not to death, but for the glory of God, that the Son of God might be glorified thereby. Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. When he had heard, therefore, that he was sick, he abode 2 days still in the same place where he was. Then after that, he to his disciples, let us go into Judea again. His disciples say to him, Master, the Jews of late sought to stone you, and go you there again. Jesus answered, Are there not 12 hours in the day? If any man walk in the day, he stumbles not, because he sees the light of the world. But if a man walk in the night, he stumbles, because there is no light in him. Zoe, in my book bag is the papers for the back. I forgot to give that to you guys. Sorry, I had a mom moment there. Something came back to my memory. I was like, oh no, I forgot something. Okay, sorry. Are there not 12 hours in the day? If any man walk in the day, he stumbles not, because he sees the light of this world. But if a man walk in the night, he stumbles, because there is no light in him. These things said he, and after that he said to them, Our friend Lazarus sleeps, but I go, that I may awake him out of sleep. Then his disciples, Lord, if he sleeps, then he shall do well. However, Jesus spoke of his death, but they thought he had spoken of taking a rest and sleep. Then Jesus said to them plainly, Lazarus is dead, and I am glad for your sakes that I was not there, to the intent you may believe. Nevertheless, let us go to him. So Jesus is always thinking about the bigger picture, right? And also what's encouraging here is that like his disciples wasn't getting what he was saying. And that means sometimes it's okay for us not to always fully understand. And for some of us, Jesus does need to just speak plainly. and that's okay. That's okay to maybe not get it the first time. Again, these moments, should be encouraging for us. The people that were with Jesus day to day still sometimes totally missed it. But he was still so good in including them and building them up and encouraging them. But he also was saying, I'm glad I didn't get there in time. I did this on purpose also for you. I'm doing this for you. Then said Thomas, which is called Didymus, to his fellow disciples, let us also go, that we may die with him. Then he's not still getting it, Thomas. I always find it interesting, like sometimes when they don't get it and then he explains something and then they almost like they go at the extra mile and thinking like they're trying to impress them, like, oh no, we understood. It's like, no, you're still not quite getting it. Then when Jesus came, he found that he laid in the grave 4 days already. Now Bethany was near to Jerusalem, about 15 furlongs off, And many of the Jews came to Martha and Mary to comfort them concerning their brother. Then Martha, as soon as she heard that Jesus was coming, went and met him, but Mary sat still in the house. I just want to pause here a second. It's, again, very strategic for Jesus to come when he did, because let's say Jesus just came when he was sick, there would not be the multitude of people there. So because that was very much Jewish culture to people, and we similar to today. If there's a death in the family, we surround them, give them food, bring them stuff. But it was also customary for people to be in your house and be a lot of people surrounding you, and so again, for him to wait when he did would mean more people would be there to witness what was about to happen. Then said Martha to Jesus, Lord, if you had been here, my brother had not died. But I know that even now, whatsoever you will ask of God, God will give it to you. Jesus says to her, your brother shall rise again. Martha says to him, I know that he shall rise again in the resurrection of the last day. One thing I want to say here is because I've talked about, Mary and Martha before, but remember last time we hear about Martha, she was complaining, right? She wasn't by Jesus' feet. But the fact that she can answer Jesus back of things that she's heard means that she listened to Jesus. So when Jesus talked to her, and this shows evidence that she changed, that she looked to, saw what her sister was doing and did the same thing. Because she would not have been able to answer back things that Jesus said if she did not. Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. He that believes in me, though he were dead, yet shall he live. And whosoever lives and believes in me shall never die. Believe you this? She says to him, yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, which should come into the world. And when she had so said, she went her way and called Mary, her sister, secretly, saying, the Master has come and calls for you. Do you realize that there's no red letter saying, oh, go get Mary. But Martha knew what Mary needed. Martha knew that Mary needed to be with Jesus. As soon as she heard that, she rose quickly and came to him. Now Jesus was not yet come into the town, but was in that place where Martha met him. The Jews then, which were with her in the house and comforted her, when they saw Mary, that she rose up hastily and went out, followed her, saying, she goes to the grave to weep there. And then when Mary was come there Jesus was, and saw him, she fell down at his feet, saying to him, Lord, if you had been here, my brother had not died. When Jesus saw, therefore, her weeping, and the Jews also weeping, which came with her, he groaned in the spirit and was troubled, and said, where have you laid him? They said to him, Lord, come and see. And Jesus wept. Jesus really loves us, and he really loved them. Then said the Jews, behold how he loved him. And some of them said, could not this man which opened the eyes of the blind have caused that even this man should not have died? Jesus, therefore, again groaning himself, comes to the grave. It was a cave, and a stone lay upon it. And Jesus said, take you away the stone. Martha, the sister of him that was dead, says to him, Lord, by this time he stinks, for he has been dead 4 days. Jesus said to her, said I not to you, that if you would believe, you should see the glory of God? Then they took away the stone from the place where the dead was laid, and Jesus lifted up his eyes and said, Father, I thank you that you have heard me, and I knew that you hear me always, but because of the people which stand by, I said it, and that they may believe, and that you have sent me. So again, the whole purpose of this miracle for people to know who Jesus really is, and also to foreshadow what he's about to do. That he is the Lord over resurrection. He's the one that can do that. And also what's fascinating, they're ready for the stench, right? So it almost makes you think of was God sustaining that body to not decay? Because it's either one or two things. Either God was sustaining him, even during the time in the grave, to prepare to be resurrected, or he got completely healed of even decay and fully resurrected. No matter what, it's an amazing miracle. And also shows the power of God that, wow, he can either sustain his body to keep it from decaying, or he completely healed even of decay for him to come out. Like, that's even more, that's why it makes this miracle even more crazy, because again, and also back to the intentional, if Jesus only just came one day later, it wouldn't have been, okay, just 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days. He waited 4 days. How much more of a miracle is that even? For him to wait that long and the miracle still come forth. Again, trying to show the deity of Jesus, that he is the Son of God. I lost my place. Oh, and then when he had spoken, he cried with a loud voice, Lazarus, come forth. And he that was dead came forth, bound hand and foot with grave clothes, and his face was bound about with a napkin. Jesus says to them, loose him and let him go. Then many of the Jews which came to Mary had seen the things which Jesus did, believed on him. So it was even for them. What's interesting is that this family loved Jesus so much, knew he was, still were surrounded by people that didn't really know him. And this miracle even helped those people to make that step toward belief. But some of them went their ways, but some of them still didn't believe and ratted it out to the Pharisees and told them what things Jesus had done. Then gathered the chief priests and the Pharisees a council and said, what do we, for this man does miracles? If we let him thus alone, all men will believe on him, and the Romans shall come and take away both our place and nation. So they're really trying to save themselves. All this is for self-preservation. Saving yourself is not going to save you. Only Jesus can save you. Because we make ridiculous decisions when we try to do self-preservation that sometimes hurt other people as well. And so again, the power of this healing is that final proclamation of Jesus' deity. This was the last straw for the Pharisees too. This is one of the last straws, saying, oh, we can't let this go anymore. But I want to go back a little bit to some connections with the Old Testament. And this is referenced actually in Matthew 8:17. Surely he has borne our griefs, where the Hebrew word there is actually infirmities, and carried our sorrows, yet we esteemed him stricken, smitten by God, and afflicted. So this is the suffering servant passage in Isaiah 53, because Isaiah has some of the most revelations of who Jesus is, prophecies of who Jesus is. But again, that connection that already in the Old Testament showing of what Jesus is going to do and prove who he is. Another one is the Malachi 4:2, the healing in his wings. One of my favorite healing passages is the woman with the issue of blood. That's one of my favorite ones, because I'm skipping to my second point here, but Jesus always does more than just a healing. There's always more to it. It's not just the healing of the physical body. Sometimes it's also the healing of the soul. That's one of the clear pictures, I believe, with the woman with the issue of blood, because you're talking about many years, long time, similar to the guy that was by the pool. She's in this affliction, and she has so much faith, again, just to touch the hem of his garment, healing in his wings. That's what wings means, is actually the edge of the garment, for her to be healed. But not only does that, yes, she does that, receives her healing, but Jesus wants to know who she is. To also pretty much just to tell her, daughter, you're healed. Daughter, you're healed. This is a woman that's been cast out for most of her life. And he says, daughter, proclaims daughter over her, to bring her back to family, to restore the soul, not only the body, but also the soul. Jesus cares about you as a whole. He wants you healed as a whole. So yes, when there's physical stuff, invite him in. But also, no, it's like maybe God wants to do something more in you as well. If there's pain in your heart, in your thoughts, God wants in on that, because he wants to do more than just a physical healing. Like when we go to the nations, a physical healing is just almost like a window a doorway for Jesus to come in more, and also to prove who he is for people to believe and move toward him. He also did it, again, what I read around most of it, with the healing, he also wanted to do stuff for people to see. Sometimes healings should be public because God has a purpose for other people to see what's going on, for them to respond, also to reveal unbelief, to reveal the hypocrisy within the Pharisees. He did, again, his healings were very strategic, very strategic. That, read the words here, with Jesus, there's always more. Jesus doesn't just want to heal you, he wants to restore you. That woman was restored at that moment, not just physically, but again, calling her daughter was a restoring moment. He wants to also uncover false beliefs. That's what he was doing with the Pharisees. He wants to uncover that. Because unfortunately, there is beliefs within the Christian world that Jesus doesn't want to heal anymore, which to me doesn't make any sense. If he's the same yesterday, today, and forever, why wouldn't he want to heal? Why wouldn't he want to do that? Especially a God that's so good, why would he withhold something like that from us? Why? And again, we've seen the testimonies where we know that he continues to heal. Now, but sometimes healing doesn't always mean it ends up like you want it. I also want to speak into that for a moment too, because again, most of you know we lost, when Adam's mom passed. That's not what we were believing for. But is she healed? Yes, she is. Because right now she's with Jesus, completely healed and whole, more whole than she ever was on earth. But that still was an answer to prayer. She was made whole. So sometimes healings don't always come in the way we think they're supposed to come. And sometimes when you have maybe persistent pain that you see Jesus haven't healed yet, maybe he's just inviting you, just invite me in. Just continue inviting me in. Still believe. Even when you don't see it, still believe, right? That guy was sitting by the pool for 38 years. Something in him was probably thinking, someday I might get there. I might as well stay here and hope for it. Even though he sounded defeated. He released his frustrations on Jesus. Be like, I'm here, no one's going to help me. He released his frustrations. He was frustrated there for 38 years and frustrated that he never got his healing. And I know I've been in a situation, when we were first hoping for children, having miscarriage, and I'm seeing people get pregnant left and right. See, Jesus, why them, not me? But that's also an invitation, like, why not them? And obviously God did answer my prayers. But I'm sure that guy's sitting there like, man, why that person? Why did they had to get in front of me? Why did they get to get healed? I've been here for 38 years. No one thinks about me, right? The voices that I'm talking about. I'm sure the voices was talking to that man. And it's evident the way he spews out his frustrations. The voices talking. I have no one to help me. I'm all alone. And yet here comes Jesus. Even in his moment of thinking no one's going to help me, here comes Jesus. So when you're in those moments thinking I'm all alone, no one's going to help me, allow Jesus to come in. Because he's probably been there, knocking on your door, trying to talk to you like, hey, do you want to be made well? And you just want to be like, well, no one's here. No one's going to help me. It's like, no, the invitation is there. And to remember what I said before, sometimes we see both scenarios, faith before or after. Is that it's okay to come to him with very little faith or no faith. Because he can still meet you there. He can still meet you there. And also, when we go to the nations, some of those people, like, they're just there because maybe they're desperate, out of desperation. That's why we see a lot more healings in the nations because of desperation. But I know more is happening in America as well. But there's just that desperation of they got to see something, and here Jesus shows up. And also, what does it mean for us to remember that Jesus is our healer? So we want to pursue Jesus and do what he did, to proceed with faith and pray for the sick. We're called to do that. If we believe Jesus is the healer, then we have to allow him to heal and invite him to heal and believe that he will heal. Amen. Contend for healing. We have to contend for healing. So if you're something in you that you are frustrated with, that then allow other people in. Because there's verses in the New Testament, the sick, bring them before the elders, let them pray for you. It's a community thing. You do not need to suffer alone. You don't have to suffer alone. There's people, God has put you in a community for a reason, to show you that you're not alone, and to tell other people, hey, I need prayer right now. I'm battling this pain or this sickness, or I feel troubled in the soul. Like, invite people in. Invite people in, and let's do what Jesus says.